So imagine like a tiny, maybe 10-pound chihuahua just launching itself through the air.
Oh boy.
Yeah, flying through the air and sinking its teeth right into a highly trained Secret Service agent.
And meanwhile, there's a massive, muscular pit bull just sitting quietly nearby, totally chilling.
Exactly, just watching it happen. And, this isn't some scene from a slapstick comedy. It actually happened during a real-world, high-stakes criminal search warrant.
Which is wild.
It is wild. But what's truly terrifying about it is that it exposes this massive critical flaw in how your brain decides who to trust.
Right, because we constantly assume that, reading a room or figuring out someone's true intentions is this very logical, rational process.
Right, like we're being detectives.
Exactly. We like to believe we are carefully analyzing the data in front of us. But that Chihuahua story proves we are largely operating on ancient biological autopilot.
Which is the perfect jumping off point for our deep dive today. We are pulling apart a really fascinating source text, Tell Me Everything, by retired U.S. Secret Service agent Brad Beeler.
And Beeler's is definitely not your typical author.
No, not at all. I mean, he spent 25 years as a special agent, but more importantly, he conducted more criminal polygraph examinations than anyone else in the entire history of the Secret Service.
Yeah, and you have to add in his deep background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, right, the jiu-jitsu aspect.
It's huge. It shapes his entire philosophy of human interaction. He basically treats conversations the exact same way he treats a grappling match. It's all about leverage, momentum, and understanding the psychological forces at play.
So our mission for you today is to extract Beeler's elite, high-stakes interrogation tactics and translate them into a masterclass that you can use every single day.
Whether you're walking into a boardroom to negotiate a major contract,
Or trying to decipher why your teenager is suddenly giving you the silent treatment.
right, or just wanting to read a room better.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We really have to start at the absolute beginning of any interaction, which, funny enough, happens before a single word is even spoken.
The biological speed of trust.
Yes. From a neuroscientific perspective, it is staggering. A human being assesses traits like trustworthiness, competence, and aggressiveness within a mere 100 milliseconds of seeing a new face.
Wait, 100 milliseconds?
Literally a tenth of a second.
That's faster than the blink of an eye. You can't consciously process a thought that quickly.
You really can't. And that is by evolutionary design. This rapid assessment is driven entirely by the amygdala.
The brain's primitive threat detection center, right?
Spot on. So think back to our prehistoric ancestors out on the savannah. They didn't have, spoken language or the luxury of time to gauge a stranger's intent.
You couldn't just walk up and say, hey, are you friendly?
Exactly. The visual cortex had to bypass the slower logical prefrontal cortex and send an immediate binary signal to the amygdala.
Friend or foe?
Exactly. Is this person a friend or are they a deadly threat? Do I relax or do I fight?
And Beeler frames this as the horns and halos effect, which makes so much sense. If you project the right visual cues in that first tenth of a second, the other person's brain assigns you a halo.
You get this immediate credibility cushion.
Right, so future slip-ups or awkward stumbles in the conversation become totally forgivable because their brain has already categorized you as safe.
But if you trigger that threat response,
You get the horns. And you start the interaction in this massive trust deficit that is nearly impossible to dig your way out of.
because of cognitive dissonance, the human brain absolutely despises being wrong. Once the amygdala makes that split-second survival judgment, it actively filters out any new information that contradicts it.
It just locks in.
It totally locks in.
Which brings us back to that ridiculous Chihuahua story.
Right.
So Beeler and his partner, Ryan, burst into a kitchen to execute a search warrant. They were just flooded with adrenaline, and they lock eyes on the two dogs in the room.
And the massive pit bull instantly triggers their threat schema.
Exactly. They assign it the horns, so they focus 100% of their energy on keeping that imposing dog calm.
While simultaneously assigning an unconscious halo to the tiny chihuahua.
Right, entirely dismissing it as a non-threat based purely on its visual footprint. Beeler says he completely ignored it until it launched itself from behind and clamped onto his groin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and he notes he was only saved from a catastrophic injury because he happened to be wearing tactical pants made of incredibly thick fire hose material.
Thank goodness for those pants.
Right. But his partner still tells people how a 10-pound lapdog turned a Secret Service agent into a chew toy, while the terrifying pit bull just sat there doing nothing.
It is a hilarious visual. I mean, truly. But it highlights a really lethal cognitive trap.
How so?
Well, when this same rapid assessment is applied to humans in high-stakes scenarios, it creates severe confirmation bias. Beeler shares this chilling anecdote about a time he was brought in to polygraph two suspects in a brutal murder involving a motorcycle gang.
Oh, wow. The ultimate test of the horns and halos effect.
Precisely. One suspect was a giant, heavily tattooed felon wearing a 1% outlaw biker patch.
So you look like the quintessential movie villain.
Exactly. The other suspect was a probationary gang member who was physically diminutive, timid, unassuming.
Let me guess. Operating on that 100 millisecond visual judgment, Beeler instantly assigned the giant biker the horns.
Yep. Assumed he was the killer right off the bat. And he assigned the timid guy the halo, assuming he was just a terrified witness caught in the crossfire.
So Beeler spends hours interrogating the timid guy, treating him like a witness, trying to gently coax him into turning on the giant biker.
Right.
And for hours, the timid suspect just keeps shaking his head and saying, "That's not it."
But Beeler's confirmation bias was so firmly locked in that he interpreted, "That's not it," as the natural hesitation of a fearful witness.
He couldn't see the truth sitting right in front of him?
He was completely blind to it.
So if a trained polygraph expert who conducts interrogations for a living can fall headfirst into this trap and question the wrong guy for hours, how are we supposed to avoid it?
It's tough, but you have to install a mechanical override to your own biology.
Okay, what does that look like?
In Beeler's case, a neutral detective who hadn't been in the room and therefore wasn't anchored to that initial visual impression stepped in.
A fresh set of eyes.
Exactly. She looked at the timid suspect with completely fresh eyes and said, "You keep saying that's not it. Well, just tell me what it is." And the timid, unassuming man with a halo immediately confessed. He admitted to killing the victim, cutting her body into 6 pieces and dumping them in the river.
Oh my goodness, the guy with the halo was the cold-blooded killer.
Yeah. So to combat this in your own life, you have to force a deliberate pause. You must actively interrogate your own assumptions.
Ask yourself if you're only seeing evidence that supports your first impression.
Exactly. You have to separate the emotional response generated by your amygdala from your objective logical analysis. And when the stakes are high, always seek an outside perspective from someone who doesn't share your initial visual bias.
So if we know that every single person we meet is biologically wired to judge us in a fraction of a second, we really have to flip the script.
We do.
We have to stop worrying about how we are perceived and start consciously orchestrating what we project. We have to, hack that 100 millisecond window.
And that requires mastering Beeler's 3 pillars of communication: the lyrics, the soundtrack, and the dance.
I love this concept.
Yeah, these 3 elements have to work together perfectly to create a symphony of trust.
Let's start with the lyrics, which are the actual words we choose. Beeler emphasizes the immense neurological power of softening words.
Yes.
Like when he sits down with a suspect, he never uses the word crime because that word carries a heavy, threatening connotation. It makes the suspect picture a jail cell, which spikes their defensive shields.
So what does he say instead?
He calls it a situation.
Situation.
Yeah, a situation sounds temporary. It sounds fixable.
That's brilliant. He applies that to everything. He doesn't say theft or embezzlement. He calls it the taking of money.
Right, this semantic framing just lowers the psychological stakes. And we see this everywhere in the corporate world, too.
Oh, for sure. Car dealerships don't sell used cars. They sell pre-owned vehicles.
Or managers don't announce a massive problem at work. They announce a new challenge.
Exactly. Words matter. But according to Beeler, the lyrics are actually the weakest part of the communication equation without the second pillar.
The soundtrack.
The soundtrack. This is your tone, your pacing, your paralinguistics.
Beeler makes a very funny observation about his wife here. He claims she has roughly 127 entirely different ways of saying the exact same 2-word phrase. I'm fine.
Universal decoder ring of marriage.
Right. The lyrics are identical every single time. But the soundtrack tells him whether she's actually doing well, whether she's being deeply sarcastic, or whether he is in catastrophic trouble and needs to apologize immediately.
Because tone overrides the words. Tone conveys the underlying emotion.
Give me an example.
Think of Winston Churchill's radio broadcast during World War II. The words were elegantly written, certainly, but it was his calm, deliberate, unwavering tone that acted as an emotional anchor for an entire terrified nation.
That makes sense.
Conversely, if your tone is flat, your message completely dies on the vine. Picture the monotone teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Bueller.
Exactly. He is delivering factual information, But his soundtrack puts the entire room into a coma.
But even a great soundtrack can be completely destroyed by the third pillar, which is the dance.
Right.
This is your visual presentation, your body language, your posture, your facial expressions. It kind of reminds me of going to a Michelin star restaurant.
Okay, how so?
Well, the ingredients could be world class. Those are your lyrics. The seasoning and temperature could be absolutely perfect. That's your soundtrack. But if the waiter comes out and serves that meal to you on a dirty, dented trash can lid, you are not going to eat it.
No way.
The visual dance ruins the entire package.
What's fascinating here is how historically significant that visual dominance is. The classic example is the 1960 U.S. presidential debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon.
Oh, the TV debate.
Yes. Voters who listened on the radio, who only had access to the lyrics and the soundtrack, generally thought Nixon won.
Really?
Yeah. But the millions who watched it on television saw Kennedy's upright, confident dance contrasted with Nixon's sweating, shifting, uncomfortable demeanor.
The television audience overwhelmingly declared Kennedy the winner.
The visual input completely overrode the auditory input.
We see the same thing in pop culture, too. Think about Milli Vanilli. They achieved global superstardom almost entirely on their dance,
Because they had incredible visual charisma.
even though it turned out they were lip-syncing. And when the actual vocalists later released an album with the exact same soundtrack, it bombed because it lacked that captivating visual dance.
Beeler uses reality television to explain this beautifully. A show like The Voice forces judges to turn their chairs away.
Right. It strips the dance out entirely.
Exactly, forcing a blind evaluation of just the lyrics and the soundtrack.
Yeah.
But American Idol evaluates the entire holistic symphony.
It just proves how heavily we lean on visual cues to establish trust and competence. Which brings up a really touching point Beeler makes about his best friend, Doug, who is deaf.
Yeah, this part was great.
Beeler talks about how, when they were teenagers, communicating with Doug was exhausting. Because Doug couldn't hear Beeler's soundtrack, Beeler had to be hyper-engaged in his dance.
He had to overcompensate visually.
Exactly. He had to be incredibly intentional with his facial expressions, his hand gestures, and just the physical energy he brought to the conversation. Taking away the auditory pillar forced absolute, undeniable presence.
And that level of presence is exactly what is missing from most modern communication.
So true.
Beeler argues that we usually engage in lazy transactional talk. We aren't really watching the other person. We're just waiting for our turn to speak.
So how do we actually fix our own symphony? Because Beeler provides a fantastic, actionable, 3-step exercise for the listener.
It is highly effective. Step 1.
Yeah.
Record a video of yourself giving a presentation or explaining a concept. Play it back completely on mute.
Okay, isolating the dance.
Exactly. Are your shoulders slumped? Are you fidgeting? Do you look like someone you would trust?
And step 2.
Turn off the video and only listen to the audio. This isolates your soundtrack. Are you using filler words? Does your tone fluctuate, or is it a monotonous drone?
Makes sense.
Then step 3, watch the whole thing with sound and video, specifically hunting for moments of disconnect.
Like if your words are saying, I am confident in this strategy, but you are looking down at the floor and your voice is shaking.
Right. The listener's brain will spot that friction immediately and flag you as untrustworthy.
Okay, so we've polished our lyrics, we've tuned our soundtrack, and we've perfected our dance. But performing a perfect symphony in an empty room doesn't accomplish anything. You have to know your audience.
Elite communicators never go in blind. They gather pre-interview intelligence. Beeler likens this preparation to the Spotify algorithm.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Think about how Spotify works. It tracks the genres you like, the songs you skip, and the podcasts you finish.
Right, it builds a profile.
It analyzes that data to feed you a highly curated playlist that keeps you engaged. A master communicator does the exact same thing.
They gather background intelligence to curate a conversation that resonates with the other person's specific psychological needs.
Exactly, building massive rapport in a fraction of the time.
Beeler used social media as his intelligence gathering tool in a major case. He was preparing to interrogate a suspect accused of horrific crimes.
What did he do?
Before he ever set foot in the room, he analyzed her Twitter account. He noted what city she had recently moved from, and more importantly, he found several tweets where she complained about having a forgiving nature that always gets taken advantage of.
Wow. He found the psychological frequencies she broadcasts on.
Exactly. So he walks into the room, and he starts by casually guessing where she's from based on a slight accent,
Lowering her anxiety.
establishing him as observant but friendly. Then, later in the interview, he drops the hammer. He looks at her and says, You seem like the kind of person who has a very forgiving personality, and I bet people take advantage of that.
Unbelievable. He mirrored her own deeply held self-image right back to her.
Yes.
Humans have an overwhelming psychological need to feel understood. When he validated her self-perception, her cognitive defenses completely collapsed. She felt safe, and she confessed to everything.
And this intelligence doesn't just come from digital footprints. It comes from physical environments, too.
Like the Bible story.
Yes. Beeler was executing a search warrant on another suspect and noticed a Bible sitting on the nightstand. It was deliberately bookmarked to Matthew chapter 14.
That's the story of Peter stepping out of a boat to walk on water toward Jesus.
Right. And when the storm picks up, Peter panics, loses his faith, and begins to sink until Jesus reaches out a hand to pull him up. Beeler noticed the margins of this Bible were packed with handwritten notes about struggling with fear and trusting the process.
That is a profound piece of environmental intelligence. It tells you exactly what anchors this person emotionally.
Later, during the interrogation, the suspect hits a wall. He gets defensive and claims, "I'm a religious man, I would never hurt anyone."
And Beeler normally avoids religion in interviews.
He does, but because he had that specific intel, he leaned right into it. He looked at the suspect and said, "We all fall short. It reminds me of Peter stepping out of the boat. When the wind got intense, he got terrified and started to sink. But he was saved when a hand reached out. I know you're scared right now, and I know you're sinking. I want to offer you my hand."
He completely bypassed the suspect's logical, legal defenses by speaking directly to his spiritual and emotional anchor.
It shifted the dynamic entirely.
It wasn't an interrogation anymore. It was a rescue. The suspect broke down sobbing and gave a full confession.
It is an incredible story, but I have to push back here on behalf of the listener.
Okay, go for it.
Because isn't there a very fine line between doing your homework before a big sales pitch or a first date and coming across as a creepy, manipulative digital stalker?
It is a critical distinction, for sure, and Beeler issues a stark warning about this. The Spotify effect is completely neutral. It can be weaponized. Scammers on dating apps use this exact same psychological mechanism maliciously. They comb through public social media profiles, harvest innocent details like a favorite obscure band, a specific hobby, or a beloved pet, and then mirror those interests perfectly in messages.
They create a manufactured sense of destiny and extreme familiarity.
They tune into your radio station, manufacture the halo, and once you trust them, they empty your bank account.
That is terrifying.
The takeaway is twofold. First, protect yourself by auditing your own privacy settings. Be aware of the intelligence you are broadcasting to the world.
And second,
When you are using this technique to build rapport in a business or personal setting, it must be exceptionally subtle.
so for the listener going into a major client pitch tomorrow, don't just memorize their LinkedIn work history.
No. Look at the organizations they volunteer for. Look at the articles they write or share.
Discover what they actually value and then subtly weave those themes into your presentation.
Because if you make it obvious that you've been reading their digital diary, the interaction feels intrusive and you instantly are on the horns.
Got it. And that strategic preparation means absolutely nothing if your physical presence undermines you the moment you walk through the door.
Right back to the dance.
Exactly. This brings us back to the very first visual cue you offer, the foundation of your dance, your physical composure, and your clothing. Vision is the first sense activated in any encounter.
It is.
Beeler highlights the golden rule of the Secret Service: never let them see you sweat. He explains that no matter how chaotic a situation becomes behind the scenes, an agent will never be seen running alongside the presidential limousine in a panic.
Because the visual cue of stress is highly contagious. If the crowd sees an agent panicking, the crowd panics.
But the visual cue of absolute calm is equally contagious. Beeler experienced this firsthand on a commercial flight that hit severe, terrifying turbulence.
Oh, I hate that.
Me too. And the college freshman sitting next to him was bordering on a full-blown panic attack, frantically asking if the plane was going down.
So what did he do?
Beeler didn't quote safety statistics. He just pointed to the front of the cabin. The flight attendants were sitting in their jump seats, casually chatting and laughing.
Wow.
He told the student, "If the experts who fly every single day aren't scared, we shouldn't be either." Her panic evaporated instantly because the visual proof of calm overrode her fear.
That physical composure is the foundation, but it extends to the literal fabric on your body through a psychological phenomenon called enclothed cognition.
Okay, break that down for us.
Yes. The clothing we wear directly alters our internal cognitive processes. A famous 2012 study by researchers Adam and Galinsky demonstrated this perfectly.
The lab coat study.
Exactly. They gave one group of participants white lab coats, which the human brain deeply associates with scientific precision and careful attention to detail. They gave another group identical coats, but told them they were painter smocks. The participants wearing the lab coats actually committed significantly fewer errors on complex cognitive tasks than those wearing the painter's coats.
The clothing literally made their brains sharper.
It did. And this isn't just an abstract laboratory concept. A recent study in the Journal of Applied Psychology looked at the habits of remote workers.
Oh, this is relevant.
They discovered that employees who woke up and dressed in professional attire while working from their living rooms reported much higher levels of focus, confidence, and productivity than those who stayed in casual loungewear.
Okay, I know a lot of people listening right now are thinking, does it really matter if I wear sweatpants to a Zoom meeting if the camera only shows my shoulders and a dress shirt?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of enclosed cognition, it matters immensely. You aren't just dressing for the webcam, you are dressing for your own neurological feedback loop.
Beeler talks about this. He points out that even for remote video calls, he steams his suit, he presses his shirt, and he meticulously shines his dress shoes.
The person on the other end of the camera will never, ever see his shoes.
But his brain knows the shoes are shined.
Precisely. That physical preparation triggers his internal confidence. It puts his mind into a state of authority.
He also notes the psychological impact of color.
Yes.
Okay.
In nature, vibrant, aggressive colors, like a poison dart fog, are a biological warning system. They scream for attention and signal danger.
So, in high-stakes communication, you shouldn't dress like a poison dart frog.
No. Beeler specifically wears soft blue dress shirts because, universally, blue projects a sense of calm, stability, and trust.
The poison dart frog effect. That is such a brilliant, actionable detail. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today.
We really have.
Let's recap the journey. We started by exploring the evolutionary neuroscience of the amygdala, learning how to bypass that brutal 100 millisecond threat detection by understanding the horns and halos effect.
Right.
Then we broke down how to consciously orchestrate our lyrics, our soundtrack, and our visual dance to project absolute, undeniable credibility.
We uncovered the power of the Spotify effect, too.
Yes, gathering pre-interview intelligence to build hyper-tailored emotional rapport. And finally, we explored how enclothed cognition and visual composure allow you to project authority before you even open your mouth.
It all synthesizes perfectly with Beeler's core Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu philosophy. Position leads to submission.
I love that.
In a grappling match, you cannot just force a submission out of nowhere. You have to patiently secure the dominant physical position first.
The exact same rule applies to human interaction.
It does. You cannot force someone to trust you, you cannot force a client to buy your product, and you cannot force a teenager to open up to you.
You have to secure the psychological position first.
You do that through meticulous preparation, active listening, and total emotional control.
You build the environment where the truth or the agreement becomes the only natural outcome, which leaves us with the final thought for you to take away today. If highly trained agents can look at a single bookmark in a Bible, or the shine on a pair of shoes, or a micro-fluctuation in the tone of your voice, and instantly read your deepest fears and truths. Wait, well, if they can do all that, what is your dance broadcasting to the world right now? Completely without your knowledge. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.